Hey, Zarina Matcha here. I've got a book coming out! My 31st! I've got a book coming out! My 31st! Ah! Oh my god! Oh my god! Ah! Sorry about that, that was rather random. But yes, indeed, I do have a book coming out, Tic Tac Toe, in exactly 2 weeks. I should have a trailer for it uploaded as well by the end of this week. I ordered it on Fiverr and yes, should be done and ready to upload hopefully soon. The entirety of the West right now is in such a terrible place, largely due to many of the contemporary culture wars that have been going on. There's a huge sense of division, anger, hatred and frustration all across contemporary Western society, which especially comes across on the internet. So now, let me tell you the story of Tic Tac Toe. It all started when I was a child. I was a big fan of the Noughts and Crosses series by Mallory Blackman. This series is about a society where people are divided into noughts, who are white people, and crosses, who are black people. The crosses hold all of the power in the society, while the noughts are second-class citizens who are treated like crap. This obviously is meant to emulate the way in which African Americans were treated by white Americans in the US during the slave trade, what with the Jim Crow laws and all that. While reading the Noughts and Crosses series as a kid, I had this idea about a society where women held all of the power and men were second-class citizens. I was generally under the false feminist impression that all of human society has been patriarchal all throughout since the dawn of time, and women have always been oppressed by men, and men have always held all of the power. This is actually not true, and a massive distortion of gender relations. There's no evidence to support the absurd idea that women have always been inferior to men. This concept was created by 1960s feminist academics, or even earlier if you look at the work of Simone de Beauvoir. But regardless, it's so false and completely distorts how relationships between men and women have always been. Not to mention, humans have been around for a pretty long time, so to even assume that we've always lived in a world where men dominate women and women have no rights is just so one-dimensional. But anyway, so I had this idea for a story called Tic Tac Toe, inspired by the name Noughts and Crosses, where men were oppressed and women held all of the power. As with many of my childhood story ideas, I simply left it alone, and then several years later, when I was at university in 2016, I revisited this idea. I had this one draft on my computer dated in January 2016 saying, if feminism went too far, and here's what I wrote. Since the revolution, men have become the second-class citizens of society. They couldn't walk anywhere without being harassed by skanks, but only allowed to see their children on specific days of the week, and couldn't do certain jobs. Women were favoured in schools, universities, workplaces, and pretty much everywhere. This tells the story of 18-year-old Trevor Lee growing up in this difficulty. So that was my first ever kind of conception. So because Tic Tac Toe is really a political satire, I can't talk about this book without discussing my general political evolution. So I identified as a feminist from the age of 14 to 18, and I stopped being a feminist because of much of the anger, hatred, and misandry that I found so prevalent within contemporary feminism. Obviously, several years and bucket loads of research later, I found that feminism has, from all the way through, right from its first wave until now, always been a very hateful, misandric, and bigoted ideology that has always been hell-bent on twisting and distorting gender relations, creating antagonism between men and women, lying to women, and really just putting women and men down in many ways. Feminism has never been about empowering women or improving women's lives. These are all lies. Much of the achievements that feminism has often taken credit for, like the pill, equal pay, and the vote, can all be easily attributed to other people and other circumstances. For example, the pill was a scientific innovation invented by men, specifically Gregory Goodwin Pincus, Frank B. Colton, and Carl Djerassi. So around, I suppose, 2014 to 2019, there was a big swarm of social and political division here on YouTube, content creators known as SJWs, or social justice warriors, who advocated for all of these rather insane things like saying that gender is a social construct, there are hundreds of genders, being offended and triggered by everything, and it all just became a joke. And then naturally you had the anti-SJWs who ended up reacting to them, and it just became a whole YouTube subgenre. I used to watch content creators like The Amazing Atheist. Actually, he used to be one of my favorite channels on YouTube. I loved all of his content years back when I was an atheist. I'm not an atheist anymore. I thought he was so funny, blunt, intelligent, sharp, and very independent in his thinking. I didn't always agree with everything he said, but he was very intelligent in how he framed it. I also liked Jacqueline Glenn, another atheist lady I used to watch, and I watched a few other people like Blair White, Siobhan Head, and Hunter Avallone, who I really enjoyed for a while, but then he became so repetitive and boring, and now his content really seems to have dried up. A lot of these creators started off being quite interesting, and then they just started to regurgitate the same types of content. This does seem to be a problem of YouTube, actually. Reaction videos and sensationalist videos sadly get way more attention than interesting, innovative content. And it's usually the smaller channels who do these more interesting types of videos, while very large channels use their platforms to stir up drama and create very reactionary content. I think this is really symptomatic of the modern age we are in, but that's the reality. People enjoy watching ridiculousness, even if it's done on purpose to play the algorithm. So my social and political evolution was really forming while I was at university, so around 2016 to 2018. In 2017, I created a blog called the Zarina Matcha blog, and much of my old ideas and views on the world are all on there. I wrote some very controversial things on there, a few of which I took down because I was actually a bit afraid of the backlash that I might receive. This is another large problem, which I'll touch on in a minute, about the modern West. People really can't anymore say what they really think without someone taking their words out of context or twisting them. And again, this is symptomatic of the culture we are in. We are living in a culture that promotes and rewards stupidity and toxicity. So regarding the Western culture wars, what seems to be going on is we have very strong ideas that are all clashing with each other. For example, Islam, feminism, cultural Marxism, social conservatism, transgender ideology, which is based on social constructionism, which is based on cultural Marxism, and so on. And really the clash, as I see it in the modern West, is between the Judeo-Christian viewpoint of the world that has dominated the West for the last 2,000 years, and the neo-progressivist ideologies that have come about as a reaction to that, like feminism, social constructionism, transgender ideology, and so on. Because most people don't really fit into ideological extremes, people often find themselves stuck in the middle of all these ideas. It's quite common for younger people to feel forced into identifying with one side over the other. Again, if we take feminism, for example, many young women call themselves feminists because they feel like they have to become a feminist to fit in with what the current culture is presenting and pushing onto young women. They don't want to feel left out. They think that feminism is the solution or the answer to women's problems. Many people claim that their idea is the solution, but in reality, it's not always that simple, and perhaps there isn't always just one solution to everything. I think this idea is actually quite dangerous to claim that one idea is the solution to everything. I do think that cultures need cohesion and should be united under shared ideas and values. But the problem is that right now, especially in the West, we have this dramatic clash of values and ideas. I don't know if it's possible for people who are so radically different in their viewpoints to be able to peacefully coexist. And sometimes I do wonder if separatism is the answer. Muslims all living peacefully together in their society, feminists all living peacefully together in their society, Christians all living peacefully together in their society, etc. I do wonder if that would actually make people much happier. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot for the last few months now, because no one seems to be able to agree on anything right now due to this large clash of ideas. And I really do think that everyone in the West does feel this right now. There's no cohesion, no cultural stability. Everything is so rowdy and noisy, and there's just no harmony at all. There's no way that a Muslim and a right-wing atheist are going to be able to agree on how the world should be, because their ideas are too incompatible. And it's no wonder that so many people love to throw hateful comments on the internet and troll people and call people names and just be rather cruel to people they don't really know. I think this is symptomatic of these cultural clashes, social dissatisfaction, and just a real lack of love, compassion, and maybe empathy for our fellow humans, as well as big misunderstandings. So regarding the book, I wrote the first draft in 2017. I wrote about 11,000 words in one day, just sitting on my bed, pissing myself laughing. And my idea was that, yes, this was a society where radical feminism had taken over and men are now second-class citizens. In the initial draft, I had these 4 key characters. So Dennis, the main character, is a straight white male in his 20s that works at a newspaper company and he wants to be an author. His boss is called Clarice. I later changed her name in the book to Kiana. And he fancies her, but relationships between men and women are illegal now because all heterosexual sex is considered rape. He has another friend who works there called Viola, a black woman, and Dennis and her have the kind of friends with benefits thing going on, and Viola also hates the whole society and wants to change things. And then Dennis has this other friend called Rudy, although I later changed his name to Remy, who is a gay black dude who is also part of the society, and he doesn't work because the state provides for, I think, black LGBT people. They all get reparations because of all the years of systemic oppression. They all get reparations and they don't have to work. Yeah. So anyway, the first full draft of this story was about 39,000 words. It was a 39,000 word novella. And like with all first drafts of a story, the skeleton is all there. They live in a society where men have no rights, the social justice party rule the country, white people are scum, and ethnic minorities are put on a pedestal. And then there's some men's activist group who want to have a revolution and overthrow the establishment and create a new society, but their ideas are just as bad and extreme as the social justice ideas. So I was really playing on these two extremes, the extremism of feminism and then the kind of extremism of the whole men going their own way thing and some of the actual genuine misogyny that does go on within some of these men's circles. I obviously don't want to confuse men going their own way with genuine men's rights activism, because I know that most men's rights activists are simply lobbying for things like custody rights for fathers, fairer and more just divorce laws, and other pieces of legislation where men are not really being cared about or looked out for by the system. I actually have a video on my other channel where I talk about 10 men's issues that feminists just don't really care about. Unfortunately, a lot of society doesn't really care about. So I wrote this draft in 2017 and then sent it to a couple of beta readers on Fiverr who both gave me some good feedback on it. I left it alone for a little bit. That's what you do when you write a story, you draft it and then leave it alone and come back to it. Then I rewrote it in 2018 and sent it to an editor via this website called Writers Services. I wanted to publish it as a novella at the end of 2018, and in 2018 I actually published my first two books, the first being Every Last Psycho, which is a contemporary young adult compilation of 2 novellas, and the second being Art is a Waste of Time, which is a poetry book. I wanted to publish Tic Tac Toe straight after in late 2018, but after reading the report that the editor sent me, I just sat and looked through the book and I was like, this needs so much more work. And I'm really glad I didn't publish it then, because it just wouldn't have been ready and it would have gone out as a rather half-hearted book. The ideas were all there, but the execution just wasn't ready. So then I took a break from it for about a year, and in 2019 published my third book, Anne, which is a contemporary young adult fiction novel about a girl who grows up in a household of domestic violence and deals with many social issues including mental health, boarding school, bullying, and so on. I'd say aside from Tic Tac Toe, that's probably my best work so far. I really do love that book and it covers many themes and it really is a very well fleshed out novel. I really do have a lot of love for Anne. That is really a book I care a lot about. I love all my books, but that book means a lot to me. I was working on a different project around late 2019 and 2020, which was a fantasy story, but I got so wound up over it and just couldn't get it right, so I put that on pause and went back to Tic Tac Toe. During COVID, I was working on Tic Tac Toe a lot while living with my former boyfriend, and I decided to change the age of the characters from being adults to teenagers, because both Every Last Psycho and my other novel, Around Midnight, are all young adult fiction, so it just seemed better to make the characters be teenagers for consistency. So with this 2020 draft, I rewrote Tic Tac Toe completely with the same characters, but now they were teenagers in school, and I obviously changed a lot of the settings, and I honestly had so much fun writing it. It was really exciting. I laughed a lot. I really had a good time with this book, and you know, for me, writing fiction is one of the most amazing things in the world. I think it is just the thing that I love to do, just more than anything. I don't know what I'd do if I didn't write fiction. Honestly, I can't think of anything more incredible than just being able to write fiction. Even more, I obviously love writing poetry, I love playing music, making videos, but for me, fiction is my number one. It always has been. I just love it so much. I really would just give my life to just write books forever. That's all I really have ever wanted, and all I managed to do most of the last 5 years anyway, effectively. So then I had my 4th draft done in 2020, and I remember the previous editor suggesting I bump it up to around 100,000 words, because at the time my first draft was about 39,000 words. I had in my head it was 30,000, but it was slightly more. My 2020 draft was 50,000 words, which at the time I thought was a good amount, and I remember thinking, there is no way that I will be able to get this to 100,000 words. Like 100,000 words? Seriously? 100,000 words? You're trying to kill me, woman? Like, no, it's not gonna happen. There is no way that I could possibly write this as 100,000 words. I was like, no, not gonna happen. No, I thought 50,000 was good. And, you know, I left it at 50,000. I left it for a while and then came back to it in 2021, rewrote it, and then got another editorial report. By this point, I'd also published 2 more books, Around Midnight, which is another novel, 50k words, so short novel, and Single Broke Female, which is my 2nd poetry collection. So yeah, by beginning of 2020, I'd now put out 5 books. And all of this was self-published, by the way. I don't recommend self-publishing unless you are utterly insane, because self-publishing is very hard and mentally taxing, because you literally have to do everything yourself, hence the word self-publishing. But it kind of depends on what you want, and to tell you the truth, I just wanted to have my work out there, even if no one bloody buys it. At least it's out there. It's out there, it exists, it's there. Even if no one reads it, at least it's there. I had wanted to traditionally publish for a while. That is actually my long-term dream. I would still genuinely like to be trad published by a publishing house. The problem is that you have to query agents, and it just takes a really long time. It takes years, and it's so difficult, and you have to keep on slogging. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, I could spend like 5 years trying to traditionally publish, trying to get, because I probably could have done it and by now I would have had 1 book out, or I could be self-published, which I have, and now I've got 20 books out. So yeah, I mean, it's a thing you kind of have to weigh up, really, because what would have had to happen is, if I wanted to go down the traditionally publishing route, I would have had to like get a, you know, a 9-to-5 job or whatever and try and do that way, which would have been difficult as well because I had some kind of personal difficulties. But yeah, I probably would have had to like do that, try and like work 9-to-5, and then being a writer, and then emailing agents, and then getting rejected, and going through this and going through that. It really would have just been a very, I don't know, I think it would have been a much more disheartening route, because at least this way, okay, it's still kind of a disheartening route, but at least I have work out there, at least my work is there, it exists, I'm an author. I don't have to kind of be like, oh yeah, I'm a girl, I write, I've got like 400 stories, and they're just sitting on my computer, and they're just not out there. It's kind of a thing, really. And I think it's better to start young as well, because I started publishing at 21 and now I'm almost 26, so hopefully by the time I'm like in my late 20s things will be better. So yeah, I guess it's better to start young and then kind of grow. But I don't know, everyone's on their own journey, which I suppose is good. Everyone's on their own publishing journey. I mean, there's so many amazing authortubers out there. Like, there's a lot of channels who talk about self-publishing. There's so many great channels actually, like on this platform. Again, most of them are really small, but there's authors out there like Joey Paul, for example, who published a lovely, she's published I think a lot, like yeah, about 20 as well. I actually read one of her books called Lynn and Hope last year. It was such a lovely story, young adult story about 2 sisters. There's loads of other people out there as well. I mean, I've even got a few books here of like other authortubers, like Shattered by Aphrodite Lee, which is so good. I really enjoyed Shattered. And then Megan Aldridge, Queen of Chaos, Esty Houston, Blood of the Lily, Sarah Long, Curse of Light. Like, they, you know, they were all, and Blood Like Magic is traditionally published, which I'll touch on in a second. But yeah, like there's so many kind of not necessarily well known authors out there who are self-published and who are publishing books, and they're making, you know, really good work. And I guess for me it's just a shame that like there's all of these, I guess you could say, undiscovered talent that are just kind of submerged and just being suppressed and not really getting the recognition or the credit they deserve. It is quite heartbreaking when you think about it, really. I don't know, it does make you wonder, like, why is the world like this? But regarding traditional publishing specifically, Alexa Dunn is probably one of the largest channels who discusses traditional publishing. I know she's got a big platform, like I think 100,000 subscribers or something like that, and she's got a lot of videos about traditional publishing. And Lisselle Sambury, as mentioned, she's got some great content about trad publishing. And yeah, I bought her first novel, Blood Like Magic. It was so good. a young adult fantasy novel. I actually first came across her because she made this 20-minute video talking about sensitivity readers and how she paid like hundreds of dollars to have sensitivity readers read for 3 of her characters. And sensitivity readers are something which people are using right now for fiction all across the publishing world. I don't know why anybody thinks this is a good idea. To me, it just sounds like the dumbest thing that has ever been invented, but we say that when we're bigots, apparently. So yeah, I actually did a video talking about this, about sensitivity readers, because a lot of people in the literary world kind of seem to have different views on it, and I really just think that the most ridiculous, stupid piece of... it's like, for me, I just think this is ridiculous, but I feel like, you know, it's hard sometimes because you say that and everyone thinks you're a bigot even though you're trying to explain yourself. So yeah, I did do this video talking about it called Are Sensitivity Readers Necessary? I actually had to film it like 6 times because every time I filmed it, I just kept on getting angry. I just kept on shouting at the camera. The fucking sensitivity readers! They're reading bullshit! They're reading literature! Bullshit! It's cultural books, it's bullshit! But you know what? I just thought like that is not going to help, because the thing is, angry rants don't help. They get views, but they don't help, especially if you're discussing something important. So in 2021, I won the Page Turner Award for Anne, the novel I published in 2019, which was pretty cool and unexpected. The prize was that they would pay for the editing and ebook cover and also promote the book upon release in their newsletter. Editing is very expensive, so I really appreciated having the edit free of charge. In early 2021, I actually embarked on publishing a romance series under a pen name, Diana Vale, and I published 11 books in 1 year. Plan was that I would be able to make lots of money writing and publishing romance books because romance generally sells well, and my idea failed. I did make some money, more than from my other books, but not even anywhere close to what I was hoping for. And I was really hoping that the books would sell well, making me a good 4-figure per month income, and then I could move out and stop living with my mother. But that really failed. So yeah, I actually felt pretty shit by the end of 2021. I was just looking at myself and my life like, oh my god, you're a loser and you're a failure. But then I guess like 99% of people, especially very artistic people, feel the same way. So what are you going to do? You know, that's life. You live and we learn. And you know, nobody's perfect. I think we forget sometimes that we are human and you can't try to be something you're not. And sometimes people are so obsessed with perfection and wanting to present themselves as utterly flawless and number one at all times, but that isn't realistic. But life is hard and people struggle and things rarely go the way you want them to go. They sort of zigzag around a little. So then in 2022, after having rewritten Tic Tac Toe again, I think this was my 6th draft now, I sent it to about 10 beta readers, some authors, a couple people who already followed me, a couple of friends and family members, and got really good feedback that helped me to shape it up. I also published 4 more romance books in 2022, which was quite fun. I remember in the summer I wrote and published 3 male-on-male romance novellas, because I have 3 romance series, one with heterosexual couples, one with gay couples, and one with lesbian couples, because readers usually prefer to read one type of coupling over the other. And I remember last summer just being really stoned and just working through these books, like powering through them, and yeah, it was so fun. After I got the beta feedback and the editorial feedback, I went and edited a Tic Tac Toe again late last year. I did most of my 7th draft in the British Library in London because I really wanted to have a change of scenery and get out of my bedroom. That helped a lot with the process, just getting a kind of change of my whereabouts. It was really quite nice. I think it was November that I finally got the 7th draft done, and I felt so drained emotionally and physically afterwards. I did actually manage to get it to 99,000 words, which was unexpected and really quite wonderful. And yes, the final draft is actually 100,000 words. Well, 102,000 if you include the foreword and the copyright page and the epilogue, which I added in as well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to ordering the paperback proof next week to see how the physical book looks. I imagine the paperback will be that thick. Chunky book, eh? The longest book I've ever written. Oh my god, like I legitimately never thought that I could write a 100,000 word novel. But here we are, I wrote an 100,000 word novel. So then I got the final edits done from the Page Turner Awards, and my boyfriend very kindly went through it for me one last time just to have one last pair of eyes on it. And then I did my final edit, which I've been preoccupied with for the last month or so, just finishing and polishing it off, getting all nice and ready, and now it's all good to go, all uploaded, all there, ready for takeoff. So, what is Tic Tac Toe really about? Well, it's a novel about a dystopian society where the government has imposed a totalitarian regime on the citizens. Men, or Ns as they're now called in the final draft, will have a curfew of 8 p.m. If you're an NO or a queer man, then your curfew is 10 p.m. and everyone has to wear pronoun badges saying she, her, or he, him. Marriage is illegal. Nobody has children the natural way anymore. People are created in reproduction centers, but a brave new world inspiration. And if you break the law by saying anything that is offensive, you are effectively shipped off to the fairness aisles where you are discarded from society forever. Yes, bundle of laughs. Very, very happy society. The main characters are Dennis, a 17-year-old white N, and his friends, or fellowkin as they're called in the book, are Remy, Viola, Angie, and Lucas. And there's also a girl in there, well, a Laz, that's a new word for female, called Kiana. And Dennis fancies her, but relationships between N's and Laz's are illegal because they're toxic or whatever. And a whole heap of crazy stuff happens. It's a very, very crazy book. The editor, actually the most recent editor, said that it was one of the strangest books that she had ever read. I think it was a woman. Was it a man or a woman? She, him, she, her. Somebody. But yeah, it's a very unconventional book, and I really hope that it will make people think, because we are living in very strange times right now of hatred, division, anger, bigotry, corruption, and these culture wars have been orchestrated to divide us all. And maybe we get so fixated on ideas and divisions and the ists and the isms, and we forget that at the end of the day, we really are all just people, and people shouldn't be treated like they're nothing. They shouldn't be made to feel like they're worthless or useless or there to just be manipulated and told what to do by governing bodies and cabals that hold all of this power and use their power to just destroy others. I really hope that this book doesn't come true. I hope it remains fiction, because it's not really going to end well for any of us if we continue to go down the road that we are going in this world. But anyway, I really hope you enjoyed hearing me discuss Tic Tac Toe and my general process behind it. Thank you so much for watching and have a lovely day.